Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I would like to welcome all of you to the third session of our Python training. My name is Feria Al-Qasi, a third-year automatic control student at the University of Bumardas, Algeria, and I will be your moderator for today. So our session, so today's session will be delivered by Mr. Dibian Chovias, who is a Master's Petroleum Engineering student graduating this May 2021 from IIT ISN Denmark, and he is currently working as a machine learning and data analytics consultant at Dicelix, and the CEO of Petroleum from Scratch. With over a year and a half of experience with oil and gas applications and petroleum solving using Python, Mr. Vias worked on numerous full-scale and mini-scale projects, going from core reservoir engineering concepts to drilling engineering ones to oil production engineering and numerical simulations using Python and its packages. Mr. Vias, Mr. Vias actually actively maintains a GitHub repository for oil and gas data analytics and machine learning and deep learning to help and mentor the community with whatever he learns. So before we start the session, I would like to remind you to keep your microphones turned off, and if you have any questions throughout the session, kindly drop them in the chat box below. Mr. Vias, the mic is all yours. We can go ahead and start.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. And thank you everyone for joining me and making it to the third session. That means you are really interested in something that is ground changing. We have talked about what Python is. We have talked about what we can do with Python. And over the last two sessions, by the way, this is the third session for someone who's joining for the first time. So for the first two sessions, we looked at how we can use Python as a tool, and we were familiarizing ourselves with the tool itself. Now we will get to more visual side of things, and we will feel more complete about what we have understood by now. We have looked at NumPy. We have looked at how NumPy can be used to calculate and to do scientific calculations, to quicken things up and make everything very fast. We have looked at how loops can be used, like for loops. We can use all those things, for loops, while loops, to iterate over multiple times and do the same task in a couple of seconds, do the same task, let's say 1,000 times. We have done a good session on functions and seen how we can compile hundreds of steps of code into just 2 3 steps and make it what is called as an abstract form of code. And we have looked at various nitty gritties of what things we can do with Python, and we solved mini projects like Newton Raphson's and stuff like that in order to make our understanding more solid. If in case you have forgotten and you want to go back and practice again, the GitHub repository is always there for you. Every session that I'll be talking about, the code notebook will be there by the end of the day on the GitHub repository. You can always go back and refer. Remember, whatever you are looking at in this session has nothing to do with memorizing. A good coder or a good data scientist never memorizes things. All he or she has to understand from the online lectures that he or she takes is that, okay, this is possible, and this is some library that will make it possible, right? For example, I read NumPy. From that NumPy lecture, I understand that it is fast, and it can do numerical things on a list of numbers really quickly. That's all I remember. That's very good. That's very good to remember, because that's all you need to remember. And all you need to do to implement all the codes and practice problems is just to go to the documentation, right? That's your help, right? For anyone who is new to this, there is a website called Stack Overflow, which will help you in whatever error you are facing. If you are using Google Colab, it will directly provide a link to go to the Stack Overflow solution of an error you are facing. But it's a very common practice. Even the best of data scientists, they also face these problems, and then go to Stack Overflow, which is a community handle platform where people, as per their experience, whatever errors they have faced, they go back and they find the solution and put the solution for other people to take help from, right? So you can always use the web. All you need to look at is, yes, this is possible. That's all you need to remember. Memorizing things is not the way to do data science. So let's, with that note, let's go with today's session. I will share my screen and see what we have in our plate today. Let me know when my screen is visible. Is it? Can the host tell me if it's visible? Mm, okay, someone in the chat told me yes, it is visible. All right. Okay, so today we will look at how to visualize the data that we have by now created or imported, be it the data that you have created, be it the data that you have imported from an Excel sheet in a pandas data frame, be it a data frame into separate arrays called X and Y. We have the power to visualize them using three libraries. The agenda will be, first we will look at matplotlib, which is a MATLAB style plotting library in Python. The second thing is Seaborn, which is more like the statistical plotting library in Python. The third thing is Plotly, which is like a very recent advancement in Python, using which you can do dynamic and interactive plotting things you can, play with, right? So it becomes very interesting by the time we get to the third point. And then, just to give you a feel of reservoir engineering, I will end up the session by talking about radial flow profile, Darcy's law example, and see how we can use visualization to check or see how viscosity can be, uh, the change of oil viscosity can impact how a radial flow profile is developed, right? So that is our target for today. Let's start with Matplotlib. Okay, I'll start with Matplotlib. So in order to do everything, first you always have to import the few libraries. For safety's sake, I'm importing pandas. I might not need it for now, but import NumPy as NP. We already have done that. This is something which is new, but it is good to have because sometimes you might see warnings which are not errors based on the version of a particular library. So if in order, if you don't want to see it, just provides import warnings and filter warnings and ignore them, right? These two steps will not display any warnings because warnings are not important. They are just for help, right? And then this is the new thing: import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. So matplotlib, as I have told you, it's a MATLAB style plotting library. From that, there is a package called PyPlot, which is the Python plotting library in Matplotlib. You import that package as PLT. It's a standard. Anyone can name it anything. You can name it P for your reference, as in how you like it. You can use your name as your reference, right? I can import matplotlib.pyplot as Divyanshu. That won't give me error, right? So that's always there. We have seen that in the last lecture. So everything that we will be doing will be helping us revise NumPy as well as helping us do visualization. So it makes our projects more complete because whatever data we are doing things with, we will always like to visualize it. At least this is my favorite part of coding. Visualizing and doing plots and looking at how data is panning out to be, it's great, right? So suppose I want to do a relative permeability plot in Python. So first I'll have to create a saturation array. So people must remember this from the last lecture. So this is the np.linspace. It helps you create a linearly spaced array from a starting point up to the ending point and providing the number of points. So we are starting, as saturation is a fraction, we will be starting from 0, ending at 1. We want 100 data points. Fine, we have provided all the three informations over here. And then this is more like, it's not standard, but it's a good correlation to go with for permeabilities because um, higher the saturation of water, higher will be the relative permeability of water, and higher the saturation of water, lower the saturation of oil, lower will be the relative permeability of oil. So this function follows that. So it's fine to use it, right? So let's run it. Now we have created our saturations. We have created two data from our saturations. We have created relative permeability of water, and we have created relative permeability of oil. For people new to reservoir engineering, relative permeability is just like, the relative ease with which the water flows or the oil flows. Suppose our rock has both oil and water, and if water is trying to flow, the ease with which water tries to flow in the presence of oil, It's called its relative permeability. In the same time, the ease with which oil is flowing when water is also present, it's called relative permeability of oil, right? So once we have created X and Y, all we have to do now, we can provide our style. This is optional. I like this style. Style is like the the color coding and the background and all those things. It's like beautification of your plot. So the step one is you have to plot. Plt.plot is your basic plotting. We have already seen this, but I told you that at that time it was optional, but now it is not optional because it's, we are talking about it. So plt.plot, first parameter that you provide is the x-axis. The second parameter that you provide is the y-axis. Okay. And on the same plot, if you on the same code cell, if you provide another the same thing, you can see first I'm plotting x comma y1, second time I'm plotting x comma y2, then on the same plot they both will be plotted, right? Now this is good because they both are relative permeability, so plotting them on the same axis does not make a difference because they have the same y range. But if in case you want to plot two drastically different things on the same x-axis, for example, I'll tell you, suppose I want to, my x-axis is the dates or the time, right? And my y-axis, y1 is oil rates, y2 is gas rates. Now these two guys are very, very different in magnitude, so plotting them on the same axis does not make sense. Rather you would want, as you see in textbooks, one side of the axis representing one other unit, other side of the axis representing another unit. So that is called axis twinning. Okay, I'll write it down here. Axis twinning, you can go and look at the documentation. Axis twinning. So in that case, you might want to look at that, but right now that's not the problem. So you can see this is relative permeability of water. This is relative permeability of oil, stuff like that, right? I know it's not, you don't, I would request you to keep your reservoir engineering geek mind off for some time because for now we are focused on Python, right? So yes, good plot, but it is good. Is it good enough? No, it's not. We need to, add a lot of things. So let's go and add more things to this plot. So we first add a grid. Okay. So we have done the same thing. We have plotted these two things again, and I have added a grid. Adding a grid can be done by plt.grid. Now I'll just tell you how, what if I want to make my lines thicker, because for someone with weak eyes, he might not be able to see these thin lines, right? So there is a short form called LW, line width equals to, let's say I want 5. And this line width also I want it to be, let's say 7. Okay. And you will see how different my plot looks after I do that. I'll run it. Wow, you can see this. Okay. So this is appearing different because I guess my style, I did not run this right. It has to be default. I'll run it. And now I run it again. Nice. So you see my oil, because it has line width of 7, it is thicker. My KRW is, now there's a short form to do this, shortcut to do this rather. The shortcut is, I'll just comment it out. The shortcut is plt.plot. Suppose I have x comma y1, and in the same line I can do the two plots. So the third, I just have to x comma y2, and you can see in this documentation as well, x comma y, x2 comma y2 and stuff like that. So you can do this in one line as well. The same thing will be plotted for you. Okay. So I'm just writing it down here if in case you want to practice it later on. Now we have done this plotting, but still I need to make more amendments or add more details to this plot. What if I want to add, I still cannot, for someone who is new, who has just entered this lecture, he does not know which color is for what kind of permeability. So I want to add a legend and a label for each plot. How can I do that? So this is how you do that. Right after you provide the x and the y axis, you provide a label equals to whatever. Label equals to whatever, right? So since this is KRW, you provide label equals to KRW. And since this is KRO, you provide label equals to KRO. So if in case I want to be more elaborate, I can do water relative permeability. I can do that, right? Water rel perm. And in this, I can do oil rel perm, right? That would not seal the deal. You still have to provide this plt.legend, right? Because how will Python know that the labels you are providing Are they for your own reference, or do you actually want to see them on your plot, right? Once you provide this statement, Python understands that, okay, this dude wants me to print this legend actually on the plotting canvas. So once you provide this, I'll run it. It was from the previous version. You see, uh, water elpom is the blue line, oil elpom is the orange line. Perfect. So now we have very nice information, but still, who, like for someone like some guy named Jayesh, he joined right now. He might not know what x-axis is and what y-axis is. So we want to do it for him, for Jayesh. So let's do it for Jayesh. We want to label x-axis, we want to label y-axis, so that he also knows what is going on. So let's do it. The way to do it, everything else is the same as we have done by now. The way to do it is this thing. So plt.x label, we provide in the bracket, we provide a string, which is called as the, uh, since you are seeing that there are two quote marks, it's a string, of course, everything, even the label was a string. So x label SW, fraction, y label KRW, and KRO, I must write KRO as well, and KRO in fraction, right? And title as well. We might want to see what's going on and want to represent it with a title, right? So relperm plots. So title, as you can already see, it's leaking the information over here. It will be appearing at the top. So once you plot it, there you go. So relperm plots, the title, whatever you provided, plt title, it's appearing at the top. The label legend is appearing here. By the way, by plt.legend, it won't always appear here. Suppose much of the information, the space was available over here, it will automatically decide where to print this legend. So don't worry about that. Or if in case you want to specifically define where you want your legend to be displayed, again, go back to Matplotlib documentation. You have a lot of options that you can provide in this bracket, where using which you will be able to display the legend at your, you know, desired location. So moving forward, now I can say my plot looks perfectly fine. Okay. I know that looking at this plot, whoever, even if he or she joins now, he or she might know what's going on, right? So let's move forward and see more types. So this was a line plot. Let's see what a scatter plot looks like. Now, I know this is a bad example, but this is also a good example because scatter plots have to be scattered, right? So that's a bad joke. But x equals to np.random.randint. Again, we are revising what we have looked at in the last lecture. So we have generated our synthetic data set right now. So we have generated 1,000 data points, which are 1,000 integers between 1 to 100, and y is, you know, 1,000 integers between 1 to 20, and we have plotted the scatter plot. So scatter plot is, again, anything goes in this bracket is always going in the format of x comma y, but the kind of plot displayed changes with what you provide after this plt dot, right? So always remember that. Suppose I don't want to use this y. Suppose I want to use this y. Y equals to x square. Now you will see my scatter plot will change. You can see the dots. Now, since there are 1,000 points, I'm not able to see the exact scatter kind of scatter plot. But if I reduce the number of points, you will see that my scatter plot looks more like scatter plot. You can see 1, 2, 3, the points are scattered. Now, in the same plot, if I plot a line plot as well, you will see that the line plot passes through this, you know, plt.plot x comma y. I might want to provide a color red. You will see that the line plot will pass through, but right now it's not a great example because the data is not sorted. So every x comma y combination is creating havoc. So that's one problem of line plot using the scatter plot, right? So that's one issue. So if we add, let's say, more points, let's see what that does. Let's say we have 100 points. Still issue, still an issue because it's randomly generated. The data is not sorted, guys. Data, you know, the first point might be here, the second point might be here, the third point might be here. That's why the line plot will also be generated like that. First point here, then it goes here, then it comes here. But if you sort this up, the data, the impact will change, right? So that is just something that I wanted to show you guys, right? Now, suppose I do this using, now, since we are talking about sorting, I will help you visualize that. Suppose I create a sorted array, right? np dot arrange or let's say np dot lin space 1 to 100 and 10 points, right? Now you will see this issue will be resolved, right? So you can see whenever this is something that me and my friends, this is an error which we face a lot of times, uh, uh, the zigzag line error. And the solution to that is more often than not, your data has to be sorted. Once your data is sorted, that zigzag line error will not be there. So we have seen scatter plot and a line plot together, right? Moving on, now we move toward more, statistics kind of plots. So first up is histogram and bar plot. Okay. Now this is more realistic oil and gas example. Suppose I want to generate a data set for porosities of sandstones and porosities of limestones, or let's say carbonates. And this is some data frame that I've created. Let's see this data frame, what it looks like. So the data frame is df.head. Let's see what it looks like. So yeah, so we have sandstone and we have carbonate, right? And whatever is the data inside it, it's the percentage format of porosities of both of them. Now I want to see the distribution of porosities of sandstone and porosities of carbonate. When I say distribution, what it means is I want to see in one plot, I want to see a lot of information about this univariate continuous data. Okay, porosity is a single parameter, so that makes it univariate. And I should not say variate right now, but yeah, it's a single parameter. And in one plot, I want to see where it is centered, how much it is spreading around the center, what is its peak, and all of these things. And I want to also compare it with the porosity of carbonates, let's say. It's very easy to do that in Python, and I will show you how. And this will also help you, understand the nature of distributions, right? I should. So I should label it so that people, I'll label it since now we know how to label. So this is for sandstone, right? And this is for carbonate. The alpha that you see is the transparency of this plot, right? If I do alpha equals to 0.9 and 0.9, you will see the nature of the plot will change. You'll see it gets dark, right? But I like it, so let's keep it that way. And plt.legend s sorry. Yeah, so do that plt.legend. Brilliant. So now there is some information in front of us. We have a histogram, which is more like for every range, we are providing the frequency on the y-axis. So the sandstone porosities are centered around 25%, which is true because sandstones have a larger, they are more porous than carbonates are. So you can see the carbonate porosity is centered around 10 to 8 to 10%, right? So it's obvious that it's good. It's a good graph because it tells you that majority of the carbonate porosity distribution is lesser than the sandstone porosity distribution. That's true. Okay. Now, next thing that you can see is more and more spread is there in sandstone. So there is a lot of variability in the data for sandstone porosity. A lot of information this can tell us. What information you can like grab from this is sandstones tend to have a huge variety of porosities, right? It's not that they will be fixed around a certain. You have seen a possible porosity, maximum porosity of 47%, ideal, theoretical. But that is there, right? 50 is, since it's synthetic, it's not a correct representation, but it's obvious that sandstone porosity will be hugely spread. Carbonates also might have outliers because of fractures and other Waggy porosities, etc., which is not shown in this. But yeah, so this is the information that a distribution shows us, and histogram is more like a very layman representation of a distribution, right? And this was a good exercise to understand how to look at a distribution. More flat the curve, more is the standard deviation of this distribution. More peak the curve, like more sharp the curve is. For example, here carbonate is sharper than sandstone. That means that the standard deviation of this sample is not that great. It is more and more centered around the mean, right? Or the center, right? So that's one information. That's what standard deviation means. In this example, sandstone has a higher standard deviation in porosities than carbonates. Okay. So let's move ahead. I will come back to Seaborn later on, but just because I showed this, I wanted to show it in Seaborn as well. So this is how you do it. Import Seaborn. It's called a KDE, called the kernel density estimator plot. So that's okay. And we will come back to it later. And we will look at the box plot also later on. But just to give you a heads up, what a box plot is, a box plot tells you, it's more like the same distribution. We are looking at it in a different way, but in a format of boxes. And every edge of the box, every line that you see in the box is the percentile. Okay, so the leftmost uh, box line that you see, the edge that you see, it's the 25th percentile of carbonate porosity, and the rightmost is the 75th percentile of carbonate porosity. Again, this is one box, shows you the percentiles and the outliers of a single distribution, which is carbonate porosity. Now we go to the next box, which is green box, which is the sandstone box. So you can see the sandstone box is more spread and the carbonate box is less spread. Again, reiterates the fact that carbonate porosity distribution is very, very centered around the central porosity value, right? And yeah, so this carbonate center around, it's again carbonate central porosity. Central tendency can be anything. It can be mean or it can be median, whatever you want to call it. But right now, what box plot shows you is the median, the 50th percentile. Okay, so the median porosity for carbonates is 10%. The median porosity for sandstone is 25%, or roundabouts, right? Now, this dots that you see, they are the outliers or anomalous porosities in carbonate samples. They might be coming from, let's say, very fractured or very wuggy kind of carbonates, right? So you can see, according to data-driven decision making, outliers are some things which are basically, if you want to look at it from a distribution plot, which is this one, this is, let's say, this is the mean. Whichever lies to the right or to the left of 3 standard deviations or more from the mean is called an outlier. So that's one definition of an outlier. So one standard deviation, let's say, is 10, then 10, then 10. So 30 units from 30, 25, 55. Beyond 55, whichever data is lying, it's called an outlier. Again, beyond left side as well, whichever data is lying, it's called an outlier. So that's a definition. Box plot helps you see the outliers in the dots. So for a carbonate, porosities close to 23-24% are destined as outliers for this particular example. So great discussion in depth about how to look at box plots and how to look at uh, distribution plots. Moving on. So let's move and see something more advanced. What if you want to see a series of plots on the same canvas, but different plots, right? Multiple plots on the same canvas. We have a white screen, we want to see 5 plots, but not just overlapping on each other, but we want to see more like a matrix of plots. So this is how you do it. It's the topic is called subplots. If you want to look at the documentation later on, it's called the subplots. And I will get you interested in this topic once I show you what's in this link. But let me just first to give you a heads up about what subplots are. This will be very important when you'll be plotting well logs. There is a data set available on well logs. So once you'll be plotting well logs, you will be needing, because well logs always are multiple plots stacked next to each other. So you have to go back and understand subplots first, right? So suppose my problem statement for plotting is I want to do x squared, x cubed, x to the power 4, and x to the power 5 in 4 different plots. So that's the simple problem I want to solve, right? So I will first create the data, right? So first I'm trying to do just x squared and x cubed, and later on I will add more. So this is the important part over here. Plt.subplots, n rows equals to 1, n columns equals to 2. Because right now I'm only planning to do 2 plots, x squared and x cubed. That's why subplots 1 and 2, right? What if I want to do more plots, let's say 4 plots, then I will add number of rows equals to 2 and number of columns equals to 2. We have an example coming on, right? Then this is figure figure dot set figure width. Width is the lateral extent up to the, like how much the lateral extent of the figure is. So that's just something that we have to So this is a function, and this will return two things. One is the figure, which is the white background basically. So take it this way: whenever you want to draw a diagram or a poster or a sketch, first thing is you have to get a paper, right? So same goes for Python. Whenever you want to do a plotting, first step is to get the white sheet or the canvas. So this is fig is the canvas, right? Then on that fig, you have to decide the number of axes. When I say axes, the number of box, right? So once you do this plt.subplots, it returns you the white sheet and the number of boxes put in that white sheet, right? Let me just tell you what I mean by that by just taking this separately and plotting it again. So yeah, so you can see it has given me number of rows 1, number of columns 2. It has given me a white canvas in the background and 2 boxes, because this is the information we are providing in this selected line. What if I say number of rows 2 and number of columns 1, and I run it again, and there you go. Brilliant, isn't it? So this is depending on your problem, whatever you want to see it like. If you want to see it left and right, that's on you. Then that case we will go with this. So I hope that's clear what figure and axis mean. Figure means the white background, axis means these boxes, right? And on these boxes, we will use these boxes and do plotting. So by now we have been doing plotting using PLT dot. Once we are using subplots, we will not be using PLT dot. Rather, we will be treating axes like a vector, and we will be calling them by index. So AX square bracket 0 will call this first box. AX square bracket 1 will call the second box. And in that we will be doing dot. So the first plot is basically in between x and y1, which is x squared. So you can see I have told you that we will not be using PLT dot, rather we'll be using AX0 dot, because we are using the first box. So AX0 dot plot x comma y1, and this is again the customization, right? We are just replacing PLT dot with AX0 dot, right? And similarly for second plot, we can use this, right? X comma y2. And once we run it, you can see this is the beautiful plot. You can already imagine how beautiful well logs will also be looking stacked next to each other. Suppose this is SP log, this is caliper log, stuff like that, right? So this is one plot. Suppose I want to add more, number of columns and number of rows. This is again for that. The data is y1, y2, y3, y4. So we already know we want to do 4 plots. So brilliant, we have done 4 plots, right? Now, as you have seen, because it's a matrix, like I told you, vector or matrix, previously it was 1D matrix, so we did not need the second dimension. Now, since AX is a 2D matrix, 2 comma 2, you can see it's a 2D matrix, we might want to, not might, we compulsorily have to provide the row number and the column number. So 0 comma 0 picks up the first box, then 0 comma 1 picks up this box, 1 comma 0 picks up this box, and for 1 comma 1 picks up this box, right? And you can keep going on and do whatever you want to do. You can also do a loop on this, and it will automatically take one plot at a time, and it will do plotting. So this is called subplots. Fairly advanced kind of thing for beginners, but it's very important as you go on in order to provide reports. If you want to see comparative plots, it's the best thing to go forward. Whenever you do, let's say, a final year or thesis projects, if you want to show comparisons between various techniques, subplots is a way to go. Moving on. So that basically ends the topic for matplotlib plotting. Let's have a look at Kansas Vellogs, how I have used the same matplotlib plotting to do the plots of Vellog. So I'll first show you the final plot that I have created. You can see how beautiful plots are created using matplotlib. Now again, like I did in this code, I just showed you, right? Figure dot set width. Suppose I do figure dot set height, that will make a tall plot, which will be needed for well logs. If it's a time series plot and you want to do a production forecasting kind of plot, then width is important. If it's a well log, then height is important. Okay, that's basically on you. So where is it? Okay, lost it. Maybe I'll open it again. Yeah, oh, it's there. Yeah. So you can see we'll go step by step. I'll just give you a heads up how to do a single well plot, and then you can go on and get this. So this data set is open source and it is available on the web. It's called Kansas Well Log. So I found it on net, and you can also find it. So this is how the data frame looks like. RxORT, RL3. So it's a lateral log. SP log is there. A lot of logs, caliper logs are there. Bulk density is there. Porosity, density porosity is there. So you can do a lot of projects using this data. So a bit, it's called, whenever you are doing plotting to understand your data, it's called exploratory data analysis. You'll be getting a lot of information about the data. So let's just head forward to, yeah. So this is a simple way to plot a log. So what I've done is I have taken the SP log, where I've taken it. Now this is very interesting. In well logs, the information is on the x-axis rather than the y-axis. Okay, depth is on the y-axis. Always remember, the reference parameter is always on the y-axis in well logs. So that's something, you will plot df depth, you will put it over here, then the whole thing will be horizontally plotted, which is not how you do well logs. So dfsp has to be on x-axis, depth has to be on y-axis. One more thing is you have to provide this thing explicitly. Y limit has to start from 5000 and has to end up to 0, because normal way of plotting y-axis is the lowest point is 0 and the highest point, we start from 0 up to 5000 at the top. But well logs, since they are starting from the surface as 0 depth, so this is something, this has to start from 5000 at the bottom and 0 up to the top. So it has to reverse the direction of the y-axis. So that's one difference. This was the another difference, x and y interchange. Y-axis reversal is another thing, and nothing else. That's just basically dependent on data. So you can bring any column, you can bring RxORT, you can bring caliper, you can plot it simultaneously and keep on going. I have shared this link in this notebook itself, so later on you can reference this and see how I have used to I have done this stepwise to come to this final plot, where I've done all the plottings together. Basically you have seen subplots already, so it will be very easy. You can see that's exactly what I'm doing, right? Right. So we'll move forward and come back to our notebook. So matplotlib is done, right? Let's move ahead to Seaborn. Next up. Yeah. So the first thing is distribution plots. We have already seen, but Seaborn does better job in distributions. It has a lot of options. It also has a lot of data sets. So let's work with data sets and plotting now. Let's get more like data analysis kind of thing. By now we were doing with artificial data, but now we will be handling real world data sets. So you can import a data set from Seaborn. It's called tips data set. uh, just an introduction about this data set. It's from a restaurant basically, and it is like, it has the information of various users and the total bills of them, and how much tip they provided, were they females or male, were they smokers or not, what day was it, what time was it, what was the size of the table they were using. So that is all the information that they have, right? And now how a typical data analysis problem goes like is, suppose I'm looking at this, I'm a data analyst for this restaurant, and I want to give some value to the restaurant, right? Now I already know that as the day gets towards the Sunday or weekend, the total bill will be higher and higher, because people tend to come with more and more people with families and all. So that's one thing that you keep in your mind. And once you have such an idea, you directly go forward and do a plot, so that your client, your manager also understands the proof behind your thinking. That's how your data analysis projects go with. So first up, what if we want to make some inferences about the statistical nature of total bill that the customers pay? Okay, suppose I am a supervisor, and I am a financial advisor for my this restaurant, and I have hired a data analyst, and I ask him, what is the current scenario, how much what's the distribution of the total bill that a typical customer pays. So in that case, that's when you use a distribution plot. So you see so first up you have to import Seaborn as SNS. So you can see SNS dot this plot. You have provided the column DF total bill, and this is the plot you get. Now is the time to make analysis about it. Why do we do this plot? That's my target to tell you this. So why do we do this plot is basically you look at the peak. First you hold the peak and you see the peak is around 10 to 15, or let's say 17, 15 to $17. So a typical customer normally pays around $17 or something. So that's one information about this data set. One place you can use it is to provide this information to the supervisor. Another thing you can use it, for example, what if this total bill data column was empty? Let's say 10, 20 rows were missing. They did not have the total bill. The customer just ran away without telling what the total bill was to the bill could not get recorded for some reason. Now we cannot just delete that row because it has other information about the customer. So what we will do is we will use this distribution plot, take the central value, let's say $17, and fill those missing values with this. This is called the most representative value because the information is the density or the frequency or the probability of bill being 17 to $18 is the highest. That's the information that you get from this peak. The probability of the bill being more than $50 is terribly low. There are who come and provide you $50 bill. Okay, so that's one information. So you will never fill your total bills column with $50 because it's more like an outlier rather than a representative information. So that's the whole picture behind why distribution plots are very important, right? First thing, they provide you information about the center of the data and the most representative value. The other thing is they provide you information about what data you should not consider, what data you should filter out, because this 50 kind of thing will hamper and it will destroy your analysis totally. So you have to figure out the data that you have to filter up first. Also you have to find out the data that you have to use it as the most probable or the most representative value. And this is the most important part of data science projects, because majority of the time your data sets will be empty and you will have to fill up those data sets before you use it in machine learning. And this plot helps you immensely. It has helped me a lot. Basically I use the distribution plots for carbonate porosity to fill in for carbonates, and that was my first attempt to filling up this carbonate porosity, right? Most people go with 25 percentile to 75 percentile as the actual data. Other than that, it's an outlier. Suppose you give an exam and you score 99 percentile, you are the topper, yes. But for a data scientist you are an outlier. He does not like you. If you fail terribly, you score 7 percentile in your exam, still you are an outlier. So data scientist looks at only the central portion. That's the best representation of the data, right? Moving on. What if I want to see the mean and the median in this data and just see about the skewness of this data set and things like that? So that is also possible. You can just do this blt.x vline and you can use numpy. You can see I have used numpy to find out mean and median, and I can see where those lie. It's a very nice distribution. It's very symmetric. It's not terribly unsymmetric. So it's a good data set. You can see mean and median, we are very close to each other. Good enough, right? Okay, now this was a continuous variable called total bill. What if I have categorical variables? In that case, we have to do categorical plots. Basically, bar plots might be there, count plots might be there. So what if in the same data set, we want to see how a continuous variable varies with a categorical variable? What I want to see is there a difference between the bill that the females pay and the bill that the total bill that the males pay, right? So that is a typical problem statement I have put up just to see from this particular data set, right? Pertaining to this particular restaurant. So you can see sns.barplots help you do that. sns.barplot, you first have to provide x equals to the sex of the customer, y equals to the total bill of the customer, and the data set that you are using, right? And this is the information. You can see maybe males eat a lot of food, so they have a higher kind of total bill than the females. The difference is in is in this. So this is also very important information that you can find out from a data set to a data set. You can find out, you can make comments about the data set, right? For example, I see that I am targeting a particular kind of customer, right? So I will look at the historical data set or the data set I already have. I will see what kind of customers give me the most profits, right? Or what kind of customers attract the most kind of uh, revenue. So in that scenario, I will try to target. I will do some sort of this kind of plot. I will see which kind of customer or which category of customer gives me the most profits, or the bills or the money, and then I will do various strategies for that customer to increase my sales. Or maybe I will look at why females are not eating much. Maybe I will look back and try to analyze why females are not eating much in my restaurant. So so that leads to decisions, right? Moving on, what if we want to see how many males and females they have visited my restaurant, right? And this tells me that a lot of females don't really like my restaurant. So I seriously have to do some work on my restaurant to attract more and more females towards my cafe or my restaurant or whatever, because current scenario, it's more biased towards males are basically liking this place a lot. Maybe they like it to chill or something, but females are staying away from this. So I have to do something. So this leads to a business problem, attracting more females to my cafe. So that's how you can do a continuous variable on y-axis and a categorical variable on x-axis, right? The code is in front of you. Now again, we have seen box plots, how to do that in Seaborn. This is how you do it in Seaborn. This will allow us a better picture of outliers. So you can see first information. We'll go step by step. So in this, what we have done is, on the x-axis we have taken the day of the week, on the y-axis we have taken the total bill, and the data, and the palette is the color style. Okay. Now you can see, as we move towards the weekend, the average, the median total bill, it increases, which is basically from domain expertise. Everyone has this food domain expertise, so it's safe to call common expertise. We know that during Sundays, a lot of people visit this restaurant and they eat a lot because they are very relaxed and they are very happy. So the bills are pretty high. During the middle of the week, the bills are very low. So that's one information that you can get. So just 2 minutes back, I talked about data filling, right? I can go one step ahead in that. Suppose my total bill part is filling again, missing again. And rather than just filling it with the median data of total bill, what if I want more confidence in my data that I'm using it to fill? So what I can do is, I can see which day of the week that customer came, and I can use this plot, and I can use the particular median data from a particular day of the week. Okay. So that is something that you can do as per your problem statement, as per your comfort. So if a customer came on Sunday, and he did not we don't have the information of what his bill was. So what we can do is, we can use the information, the gender of the person. Suppose he or she, maybe he was a male. So we take that information, we see what day of the week was it was Sunday, and then we have two informations to fill in the data. So we have more and more confidence in how we fill the data. That's called data pre-processing, right? So that's about, and these dots that you see, they are basically outliers. For Thursday, a bill around 35 or something, it's very rare. For a Sunday, bills around 35 is not rare, but bills around uh, 45 and 50 is rare. For a Saturday, you can see a lot of people come. Saturday is also a good day. So basically, by experience, someone came on a Saturday and paid a huge bill of more than $50. So these are outliers, the dots that you see. So let's move on and do a regression plot stop in the same data set. Suppose there are two continuous columns. Suppose there's a total bill column is there, and we have a tip. So a customer, if we imagine, before doing any analysis, if we imagine in our heads, a customer who can afford a lot of bill, or who can afford a lot of food, who can afford a huge bill, can also afford a good tip as well, right? So that's my theory. And let me see if that is verified. Yes, you can see, we can verify it. On the x-axis, I have the total bill. On the y-axis, I have the tip. And you can see there is kind of a line a linear correlation between them, or a positive correlation between them, or a direct proportion between them. And I can fit a linear plot in between them using this SNS.lm plot. Okay. So on x-axis, we provide the total bill. On y-axis, we provide the tip and the data. So lm plot, what it does is it does the least squares analysis in itself, and it gives you the best straight line and a shaded area, which is called the range of uncertainty in this data. So you can see this line can be used to fill in the data if in case the data has to be inferred from tip. Suppose we know the tip, we want to fill in the total bill. You can use the equation of this straight line to fill in for that, right? So that's one thing. What if I want to do, what if something I want to differentiate this correlation as per the gender, right? The tip versus total bill relation, and we want to do individually for both the genders. So you can see the difference is not that much, but you can see uh, you cannot see really anything. Not much difference you can make out of it. So basically, we can fairly assume that there is no bifurcation on the gender basis as far as the tips and the total bills go. So that's one information, right? What if I don't want to do this plot one on top of the other? I want to do I want to do two plots. This is the code for that. Okay. So that's about Seaborn. Very similar thing can be done with reg plot. More easy to remember because it's regression. So reg plot, it's more easy to remember, right? Okay. So this is a code I have put in practice for you. So you can use this code, and it's more like an exercise. It will use the standard iris dataset, and it will tell you how you do visualizations and how you use visualizations to do statistical analysis, right? So this code will be there at the end of the day, and you will use this, and you will practice visualizations and make inferences. Please make sure whatever visualizations you do, you always make inferences from that, and maybe write it as a notes or something, because that is why you are doing those visualizations, right? So that does Seaborn and Matplotlib. So basically, your task about visualizations is done by now. You have understood what it takes to uh, these are the max kind of visualization variants you will need in your data science projects. But a very interesting recent advancement in visualizations has been the interactive plotting, and I love it because I don't. What if I want to use this plot and just zoom in? Suppose I have this the plot. Oh, I just spilled the secret. Suppose I want to zoom in this plot and find out what y-axis value is here and stuff like that. So that is why we need visualize dynamic or interactive visualization. The library that helps you does this do this is Plotly Express. So first step is you import Plotly Express as px. You take this data frame. Suppose you want to do scatter plot. So px.scatter, x equals to total bill, y equals to tip. The same scatter plot that we did over here some time back. It just vanished by now. So yeah. So same scatter plot we are doing using an interactive visualization, and the difference is if you hover on any point, you can see the total bill is 23.7, tip is 65. You can see the outlier. The tip is $10. It's a huge tip. The total bill is 50.81. We had no idea what that magnitude was. By now, we were just saying it was greater than 50, but now we can be more definite in what we are trying to say, right? Brilliant. So it has a lot of if you want to download a plot, you can do this. If you want to zoom in, you can do this. If you want to, let's say, lasso select the plot, you can do this stuff like that. And if you want to auto scale, you can go back to this, right? So I'll just remove the lasso select and I'll go, right? So that's one thing about this plot. It's still on the lasso select. I don't know why. Zoom. Box select. Yeah. So you can see, you can just forget all the other points and you can do the box on the data that you are interested in. So that's a scatter plot, but does not give you much information rather than the fact that X and Y are directly correlated with each other. What if I want to see the differentiation, let's say on a categorical variable, sex, let's say. So we can do that. We can provide color of the points as sex, and you can see this is the color. And you can see the highest bill was paid by a male, and it was $50.81, and the tip was $10. For whoever this guy is, you need to go party with this guy because this 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 guy eats a lot. And the lowest bill was also someone who came, and so that's not the lowest. So this is the lowest bill. So it was paid by a female. Maybe she came for just a tea or a coffee, and she came for $3 and tip was $1. And so she was female. So this is the information. So basically it's a 3D plot, because one is total bill, one is tip, and the other third dimension is the gender, right? So that's one information. Moving on, we have scatter plots with one more information, which is the size of the table. Okay, so basically very interesting information is the guy that gave the largest bill does not have that much size of the table. You can see the size of this bubble, but someone with a lower bill had more size. So it's something very interesting, because less number of people they came and they ate a lot, more number of people they came and did not eat a lot. So that tells you a lot about the kind of customers that come in a restaurant, right? So that's about that. And what if we want to do a typical DCA example, which is very when I was doing DCA for my company, I realized that uh, DCA does need these interactive plots, because when you want to do a forecast using DCA, you want to see what is the forecast value. Like you want to hover around, let's say 2020, and you want to see what is the flow rate at 2020. So that's important. This interactive visualization is important in oil and gas problems. So everyone knows the exponential decline, right? So we have initial flow rate, we have a B, and Q equals to Q naught e to the power minus BT, and then I have created a data frame out of it, and then I have plotted this Q and T, right? So it's an exponential decline. You can see it gets to exponential is a very steep kind of decline, and it gets to very low values in very short time. So you can see around 200 days the flow rate is very low. So it's my problem, it's not actual data, so don't make conclusions. So suppose I want to find out after how many days. Suppose my economic limit was let's say 10 barrels per day. Now I want to find out how many days, after how many days that I reach the economic limit, and I can get that information using this only, this plotting only. You can see around 103 days my flow rate is 11.63. And as soon as I can zoom on this part, and I said 10 barrels, right? So you can see 10 barrels per day is reached 102. Brilliant. So somewhere between 102 days and 123 days, somewhere over here, 115 days or something, you lost your economic limit, right? So that's one conclusion, which is very simple, just with interactive plots. Okay. So yeah, so you can use this example. This is an exponential decline example. You can use this example, the same template of coding, to plot a hyperbolic decline when you go back home and like use your own time. And you can do the same kind of plot for a hyperbolic plot and find out what is the time that it takes. So for exponential decline, I have told you that it took 115 days for us to reach the economic limit. What if I do hyperbolic decline and see how much time it takes if it was hyperbolically declining, right? So that's something that you can just make a fake kind of conclusion about it. Now, finally, this is not a tutorial, but just something which is more possible using this Plotly library. It's called animation, and you can see very simple to code, and you can see it is showing how various parameters are varying with year. So in 1952, you can see this China had some properties and stuff like that. So you can see. So this is a typical possibility. Now, how I took this possibility is, I back in days when I was doing reservoir simulation with Python, I wanted something like this very badly. And now that I have this, you can use this same thing. And suppose you have a pressure versus distance kind of plot, or the pressure profile for your reservoir, and it varies. Simulation is basically we are trying to show how pressure profile of a reservoir or saturation profile, it varies with respect to time, right? So we can use this kind of animation to show how a typical block or a grid block or a sum of grid blocks or a total reservoir, how the pressure is varying with respect to time, right? So these are all the possibilities. Finally, this is an exercise. You can see I have done all the information from a Darcy's law perspective. And you can see I have provided two viscosities. One is 0.5 centipoise, one is 10 centipoise. I have used PR equals to PE minus 141.2 Q mu B by KH, ln RE by RW, ln RE by R. And I plotted the pressure profile of a reservoir with radius. And you can see that when my oil viscosity was 0.5 centipoise, my PWF, which is the pressure that the oil came to my oil well with, it was huge because it was such a nice, less viscous. It was such a light oil with only 0.5 centipoise viscosity that uh, this whole thing comes up very, very energetically. What if I have, viscous oil, let's say 1000 centipoise, right? So that in that case, my viscosity, my PWF will, what will happen to it? It might go down significantly because a lot of pressure drop will happen in that case. So that is something I leave to you. So this is the code for that. I will leave that to you when you do that after this lecture. So that ends a lot of things we have discussed today. So that ends the session on visualizations. If anyone has doubts, I'm ready.
Thank Thanks a lot, Mr. Devias, for this session. Uh, okay, so keeping up with the chat box, I don't think we had any questions, but if anyone does have a question, please make sure to send it to us.
We can wait. If anyone has 2-3 minutes, we can wait because it's a lot to process. So if anyone has any doubt beyond this lecture as well, from previous lectures, or any doubt that they have regarding this topic, we can discuss.
We just got a question. It's from Mr. Jayesh Shahar.
Yeah.
Can you show the last code of the animation plot once?
Animation plot. Okay, the code for the animation plot. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so it's a data which we have imported from Gapminder. So it's a not it's the data is called Gapminder. We have imported it from Plotly Express itself. So it's a data. I have shown the data. On the x-axis we have GDP per capita. On y-axis we have life expectancy. The major part, the important part in this is animation frame, which is the year, which is again a column in this data set. So we are taking this like the third dimension. The first dimension is x-axis is GDP per capita. The second dimension is life expectancy. And basically by providing the third dimension is year, we are saying that show me how this scatter plot varies as a function of time over the years. And that's exactly what we can see about once you press this play button. Good question, Jay. So we don't.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Thank you, Kashish. I'll be providing this code notebook link to the host and we'll share this link.
So,
what other?
Here's a question. What are the major problems faced during plotting oil and gas data?
Major problems. Plotting will not be, the errors will not be the major issues in plotting, because even if the data is whatever, the plots will still come up. But the major issues that you have to go through is most of the times the data visualizations might lead you to wrong conclusions, right? So that is something that you always have to figure out first. For example, if you do a LM plot, we did an LM plot today, right? So what I did not tell you was, before doing a regression plot or before doing a least squares regression fitting, first you have to remove the outliers in order to find the major representative model for the X and Y, right? So these are common data science problems which a typical oil and gas engineer also faces. the issues that I faced during visualizations in time series data. Suppose we are doing production profiling. Uh, Firstly, we have to make sure that we provide x-axis as flat as possible if we want a very horizontal plot, and logs have to be very vertical. So that always keeps on varying for type data to data. Secondly, uh, the data always keeps on going zigzag. For example, when I was handling the wall field data set, the data somehow the dates did not match and data always went backwards in time. So it showed a very terrible information. And I did not have a clue why that's happening. So a lot of problems are there. But the major goal is first filter the data, then do the plotting, then make conclusion. Yeah, so that was a good question.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I think we have the time for one more question. If anyone wants to ask something,
Yeah.
as Mr. Vias said, about this session or the president wants.
Yep.
Since there isn't any questions, so thanks a lot, Mr. Vias, for this interesting sessions. We had a lot of valuable information. Thanks for those of you who attended. The recording of the session will be shared with you throughout our our YouTube channel. So please keep updated with us, and make sure to look forward for the quiz and participate in it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Thanks a
Good
lot.
day, everyone.